He was already in the waiting room when I stepped out of the elevator, sitting very straight in one of those chairs that looked like they were designed by someone who hates spines, flipping through a magazine as if he hadn't practiced this exact pose in a mirror. He looked up when the doors slid open and gave me a polite nod that said, "I'm harmless, I recycle, I know how to use a coaster." I knew who he was before Ava stood up from the corner and waved too brightly and said, "Hey. You found it," as if we were all about to compare charcuterie boards and not our relationship's vital signs. She crossed to me with that nervous half-smile and the coffee breath I love, touched my arm, and said, "Babe, this is Ben." She told me she wanted me to come to therapy with her because we were stuck in the same two fights, looping them like a playlist that only had two songs. She did not tell me her ex would be there to give context. The word context did a weird little somersault over my head. I could hear it hit the wall and slide to the floor. I said the first thing that arrived. "Why is he here?" I wasn't angry yet, I was in whatever stage comes before anger, like the part in a recipe where you're supposed to preheat the oven and trust that something is warming up even though you can't see it. Ava said, "I should have called you. He's just going to help us explain what happened before, like patterns. It'll take 10 minutes. Dr. Patel said it's okay if everyone consents." She said, "consents," in a voice that hoped I would be the kind of person who'd agree to anything if a professional used a clinically gentle tone. Ben offered his hand. "I know this is weird," he said, warm palm, dry smile. "I'm here to support you both." The sentence sat in the air between us like a fake flower, anatomically correct, totally wrong. Dr. Patel opened the door and invited us in. The office smelled like cinnamon tea and good decisions. There were plants, which always makes me feel judged by someone's capacity to keep things alive. She was small and solid and wore the kind of shoes that suggest she can stand for a long time without thinking about it. "Before we begin," she said, "let's review consent. Therapy is for the people in the relationship. If there's a third party present, it is by mutual agreement, time-limited, and with a clear goal. Do we all understand?" I said, "I'm hearing this plan for the first time." Ava flinched like the sentence had a B in it. "I wanted to tell you yesterday." I chickened out. "I'm sorry." She looked so sorry I could have put the word on toast and eaten it. Dr. Patel waited. I looked at the carpet and then at Ava and then at Ben, whose face was arranged to be supportive without being smug, and I said, "Fine. 10 minutes. Ben told a story I wasn't there for but had become intimately familiar with in the aftermath, how he and Ava had been together for 3 years, how they loved each other's families, how he lost his job and then himself, how he became suspicious in the way people do when everything else is falling apart and they need one thing to be someone else's fault. He said, "My insecurity poisoned us," which is true and also the kind of sentence that sounds like a confession and can act like a cologne. He said, "I see some of the same dynamics now," and he looked at me for the first time like I might know the choreography. Ava freezes when she feels misunderstood. She gets sarcastic. She shuts down. And when she shuts down, you escalate. You pursue. Then both of you say things you don't mean, and later you're shocked you said them. She hates it when her words get quoted back at her. You hate it when your questions don't get direct answers. If you keep the cycle, you'll become us. Dar. Patel said, "Thank you." That was succinct. She turned to me. "How are you doing?" I said, "This is like being told the road ahead has black ice by the guy who crashed his car on it." Ben actually smiled at that, which I resented for being charming. 10 minutes stretched to 15. Dr. Patel ended it like a proctor calling time. "Ben, thank you for coming. I'm going to continue with Ava and Nathan alone." "That's my name, Nathan." He stood, shook my hand again, told me he wished us well. Outside the door, I heard him apologize to the receptionist for being in the way, in a tone that implied he'd spent his whole life not being in the way. I stared at the place he'd occupied and tried to decide which of my feelings was wearing the loudest shoes. Hurt 1. Then humiliation sprinted in late and took the trophy out of Hurt's hands. Dr. Patel let the silence settle for a minute like dust. Ava started to cry in that contained way where the eyes get glossy and you can tell someone is clamping their jaw to make sure the leak doesn't turn into a flood. "I screwed up the ask," she said. "It felt big and scary and I avoided the hard part, and now it's bigger and scarier." She looked at me. I wanted someone in the room who knows my worst version and would say, "You're not crazy, this is how you get when you're scared, so you wouldn't think I was choosing to be mean." She said mean like the word might bite. "I didn't bring him to team up with me against you. I brought him because I wanted to be known quickly." Dr. Patel nodded. "What are you afraid of, Nathan?" "That was easy. Being outnumbered in my own relationship," I said. "Being told by a man who used to love my girlfriend that I should take notes." We began there, with the part where I felt like an extra in a movie about my life. Dr. Patel said a word I had to repeat out loud to keep from rolling my eyes at it because it sounded like a geometry quiz, triangulation. She said, "When a dyad, two people, feels unstable, we humans are geniuses at bringing in a third point to stabilize the leg that's wobbling. Sometimes it helps, most times, it deepens the wobble. Therapy isn't a public forum. It's not a courtroom. It's a room where we tell the unbeautiful truth and practice tolerating the temperature of it." She asked if we wanted to set a boundary about third parties. I said yes so fast it tripped over itself. Ava nodded. "Okay," Dr. Patel said. "No third parties in therapy unless we discuss and agree together at least a session ahead. And let's add, if you seek perspective from friends, you tell each other you're doing it, and you report the advice honestly." She wrote it down like it was a law we were passing. We talked about our two fights. Fight 1 is about time, me wanting answers now, Ava needing space. I ask a question and if she hesitates I ask it again louder, like I'm trying to make it go through a thicker wall. She calls my urgency, the fire alarm voice, which is fair and rude. My fear says, if I don't get clarity in the next 60 seconds, I won't get it ever. Her fear says, if I say the wrong words under pressure, I will be sentenced to those words for life. Fight 2 is about loyalty. Not the physical kind, we're boringly monogamous, but the private, unphotographable kind where you wonder whose side someone is on in the 5 minutes after a disagreement. I need to feel like she's on my side even when we disagree. She needs to feel like I don't require immediate loyalty pledges to tolerate the discomfort of being disagreed with. Dr. Patel gave us an exercise so kindergarten simple it felt like a prank. When you notice the alarm voice or the frozen face, she said, name your state like a weather report. I'm in alarm. I'm in ice. Then agree on a pause, 20 minutes, an hour, where you literally walk around the block, splash water on your faces, reset your nervous systems. Come back with one sentence you can stand behind without regretting it later. That night, we were weirdly tender. It happens after the first therapy session, you feel like you've been lightly sanded, fragile but smoother. We made enchiladas and made too much guacamole on purpose. We danced in socks on the kitchen tile while the tortillas warmed and the smoke alarm pretended to be an important part of the cooking team. I tried to say that I hated meeting Ben, that I felt like the second choice invited to a graduation party after the first choice RSVP'd no. Ava tried to say she had wanted to be the most honest version of herself in the room even if it meant being compared to her old mistakes. We failed and then tried again and then landed on something that felt like a mutual yes, a boundary about Ben. If he texted, she would tell me. If she wanted to talk to him for closure or clarity, it would be on the table between us, not hidden like a dagger in a boot. She deleted his number while I watched. We clinked water glasses like the adults we pretend to be. 3 days later, at 8:17 a.m., my phone buzzed with a photo from a coworker who loves gossip the way dolphins love leaping. The picture was of a coffee shop across from our office. Ava was sitting at the corner table under the fern that thinks it's a chandelier. Across from her was Ben, leaning in, the way you lean in when you're trying to look like empathy. The caption said, "Is that It is a particular experience to feel your skeleton move inside your body. I did the thing you're not supposed to do and marched over there without a plan, like a man who has never seen a plan and doesn't trust them anyway. Behind the glass, Ava saw me and waved, buoyed smile, hopeful eyes, like I was the friend they'd been waiting for to bring the punchline. I pointed gently to the street. She came out. We were just talking about ground rules, she said. I wanted to tell you first, but it was last minute and he was nearby and he texted that he was having a hard day and I held up a hand so I wouldn't say words I couldn't take back. You told Dr. Patel we'd keep third parties on the table. You told me you'd tell me. You deleted his number. She said, he emailed. It was a silly explanation that contained both truth and insult. I said I couldn't do this with the fern and the man attached to the fern's gravity watching us through glass like a compassionate aquarium. I walked away and practiced Dr. Patel's weather report by myself on the sidewalk. I'm in alarm, I said out loud. A woman walking her pug gave me a thumbs up without context, which was oddly helpful. We didn't talk for 8 hours. At 5:03 p.m., she knocked on the doorframe of my office like a neighbor. Do you want to walk? We walked. She told me Ben had emailed that morning to apologize for showing up at therapy and to say he wanted to support our boundary. Then he wrote a paragraph that sounded like a resignation letter to a job he loved, which is his love language, and asked if they could meet once to debrief their patterns so he could stop feeling like every mistake had a ghost he owed rent to. I wanted to say no, she said. I said yes. It felt merciful. And honestly it felt like a test for me. I wanted to prove I could do it cleanly, with you in mind, and I thought telling you after would be kinder than asking because asking would put you in an unwinnable position. If you said no, you'd be the controlling boyfriend. If you said yes, you'd be the hurt boyfriend. She looked at me like the sentence was a plant she hoped would take root. I said, you took away my chance to be either. We walked past a couple arguing in hushed stage whispers about whether a tomato counts as produce if it goes straight into a sauce. I wanted our problem to be tomato classification level. Dr. Patel asked us, next session, who benefits when difficult things are framed as mercy instead of choices with costs. Ava said, I thought I was being kind. Dr. Patel said, to whom? Ava said, to both of you, and then sat back like she'd solved something, and then sat forward again as if she'd realized solving the wrong equation gives you a wrong but very confident answer. You wanted to be the Ava who could fix everyone, Dr. Patel said gently. You were the Ava who doubled everyone else's feelings and halved your own guilt. She turned to me. Nathan, what do you want the boundary to be? I said, I want to be the person she checks with before inviting her past into our present. It sounded controlling, a little, and it also sounded like love on days when love feels like locking the door not because you hate the outside but because you value what's inside. Ava nodded. Okay. No meetings with Ben. No contact for 90 days. After that we revisit, with you, in this room. She looked like someone signing a treaty. I thought that would be the end of it. I keep thinking the ends of things are tidy because my grandparents were teachers and told stories with morals. Ben did not like the treaty. Ben wrote a long email titled, A Note You Don't Have to Read, which is how you trick people into reading. He said he understood but it hurt and he wished us well and he thought maybe, if therapy allowed, he could send Dr. Patel notes about his perspective so she could have the full picture. Dr. Patel replied, firmly, that she does not take notes from ex-partners and that if he needed support she could recommend a therapist for him. He replied, I didn't mean to intrude, which is a sentence that is a doorbell disguised as an apology. We learned about it when Dr. Patel told us like a teacher confiscating a note in class and reading it without cruelty. We sat there in our matching embarrassed faces while she closed a door that did not belong to us. Life kept happening around the boundary. We learned how to fight without phrases that sound like knives. Ava doesn't say, always, and I don't say, never. We stopped quoting each other back in our worst hours and started quoting ourselves when we were decent. We made a rule to slow arguments down by touching, hand to shoulder, knee to knee, like putting a finger on the pulse of the thing trying to run away. We failed sometimes and then tried again. There is nothing cinematic about two people getting better in boring increments. There should be a montage, there is not. There is the trash that still needs to go out and the way your throat catches when your phone lights up and it's just a shipping notification. There was one night it almost came apart. We were at our friend Jonah's birthday at a bar that believes Edison bulbs excuse everything. In the middle of a story about how human adults should not attempt slip-and slides, Ava's face did the thing where it pivots to listening without moving. She took her phone out, glanced down, put it face down, and smiled too fast. This is the part where I am supposed to remember all our skills and hold the weather report in my mouth like a peppermint. I didn't. I said, "Who was that?" too sharply, and I sounded like the dad character in an indie film about a child who grows up complaining about him. She said, "Nobody," which is what people say when the somebody isn't the point yet. I said, "I don't want to be the person who asks that," which is what people say when they are being exactly the person who asks that. We left without saying goodbye. On the sidewalk under those cruelly pretty bulbs, we blew our paused timeline to pieces. I wanted the answer. She wanted 20 minutes. I said, "If it's Ben, just say it." She said, "It's not." I said, "Show me." She said, "No, I heard the jail cell slam in the word and made it worse." She said, "It was his sister," after a beat that felt long enough to plant a garden in. She sent a photo from their dad's garage. It's a thing. My stomach shrank because of course death is always walking around in a scene somewhere, waiting to be introduced. "Do you need to call her?" I asked, small voice, actually remembering how to be human. She said, softer, "No. She just wanted to show me something. I didn't tell you right away because sometimes telling you anything that even sniffs of Ben feels like opening a door and I'm so tired of doors." I apologized for the smell of jail in my tone. She apologized for the nobody. We stood under the bulbs and practiced forgiving each other while a rideshare driver double-parked like he had diplomatic immunity and a woman laughed like she'd been waiting all week to. The second time Dr. Patel said triangulation, she drew a triangle on a pad and then drew a circle around it. "This," she said, "is the work. Either people stay triangles, me, the other person, the third point, or they work to become circles of two. Circles are harder. Triangles feel stable because someone outside can hold one corner. Circles require two people to lean." She looked at Ava. "Do you want a circle with Nathan?" Ava said, yes, without any lag, without any funny voice, which felt like letting the tide take me for a second, like a good kind of drowning. "Then we keep the door closed," Dr. Patel said. "We let the former corner become a person again, not a function. He gets to be someone else's problem, or no one's. He doesn't have to be a character in your story to continue existing." Ben tested the door one last time. He sent a paper letter. The envelope was unthreatening beige, the handwriting masculine curly, the stamp crooked in that almost endearing way. Inside was a printout of a poem he used to love and a note that said, "This isn't a boundary violation because I'm not texting or emailing. Paper is different. I hope you're well." We read it on the kitchen counter like we were defusing a small bomb made by a thoughtful person. It wasn't violent. It was hungry. It wanted to be allowed by a technicality and by our decency. Ava took a picture of it for the record, then ripped it into long strips like the kindling I still don't know how to arrange. We stood at the sink and watched the pieces float for a second before the garbage disposal did its ugly, useful work. She whispered, "Circle," like a password, and we went for a walk because sometimes you can't sit still near an old itch. The 90 days came and went. We did not throw a party. We noticed small changes that added up to something sturdier. Ava started telling me when she wanted to avoid me, which sounds mean and saved us. She'd say, "My instinct is to freeze and then pretend I didn't, I'm going to take a shower and come back," and my brain, which used to interpret every exit as abandonment, learned to count showers as a form of love. I started telling her when I wanted to interrogate her, which sounds mean and saved us. I'd say, the little cop in my head wants to flash a badge. I'm going to feed him a sandwich and then come back, and the cop, fussy, sat down. We made a reassurance menu and taped it to the fridge like the specials of the day. Her side said, say you choose me, hold me for 1 minute, tell me what I did right this week. My side said, tell me I'm safe to ask, put your phone away for 15 minutes, remind me that past me isn't present me. We laughed at ourselves and used it like survivors. On day 91, Dr. Patel asked if we wanted to revisit the boundary. Ava stared at the plant in the corner that had grown 3 new leaves since we started. I thought I would, she said. I don't. Then she said the thing that took our breath and folded it into a simpler shape. You are the person I want to tell my worst thought to. It used to be him, because he already knew my worst, and the stakes were dead. It felt safer to confess to the graveyard than to the living. But I don't want a graveyard anymore. I looked at her and saw the dorky, majestic truth of us, 2 people who used to audition old characters for new roles, 2 people who now hire better. We still mess up. I still sometimes ask a question in a way that has a siren in it. She still sometimes says, nothing, when she means, something enormous and prickly. The difference is we stop at the doorway and ask, circle. And we do the silly thing of making a circle with our arms in the air and stepping into it, which is embarrassing and works. When my friend sent me a screen recording of Ben's new girlfriend's public story and said, looks like he's okay, I did not click it. I did not bring that ghost into the room to compare hair or teeth or the particular flatware couples choose when they are excited about brunch. I said, out loud, in my car like a person reciting a spell, he's a person, not a function, and drove to the grocery store and bought cilantro like life keeps asking for small chores. People ask me sometimes, when they hear the PG-13 version of this, whether I'd allow an X in the room again if it meant understanding happened faster. The answer I give is boring and true, I'd allow any third person we both wanted, after we both agreed, for a clear reason, with an ending baked in. I wouldn't allow a surprise. Surprise is for cakes, not therapists' waiting rooms. I'd tell anyone who loves someone who is tempted by the mercy of context, that real context is what you build together, on purpose, on cold Tuesdays and satisfied Sundays, by telling the truth before the cop and the freezer come out, by trusting that love can tolerate the temperature of a hard sentence spoken in a gentle voice. On our way to session last week, the elevator was out and we took the stairs like a montage of people becoming better. On the 3rd floor landing, Ava stopped and pressed her forehead to mine and said, if I ever invite anyone to our therapy again without telling you, you can throw a tortilla at me. I said, that's a waste of a tortilla, and she laughed into my mouth and I remembered how everything hard we've done has been purchased with this stupid, golden currency, laughing when it's felt like we should be solemn, being solemn when the joke would be a shield, calling our storms by name before we walk into them with umbrellas and a weather app that is us. Sometimes I still see Ben's shape in the early rooms of our story, standing there with his polite nod and his coaster and his helpful notes. In my better moments, I bless him and move on. In my lesser moments, I allow myself one miniature fantasy where I go back and say, we've got it from here, with the exact amount of grace and pride that line deserves. Then I come home and find Ava sitting cross-legged on the floor next to a box of photos we promised to sort months ago, and she looks up and says, do you want to do the hard thing now or the harder thing later? And we pick, now, because it has become our favorite word. We make a circle with our hands. We step in. We put the photos into piles labeled, keep, scan, recycle, and, why did we own this? We keep what matters. We let the rest finally belong to the past.